Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking to you today about the Libra Equinox that is happening on the 22nd of September. And this really has to be taken together with the solar eclipse, which is happening less than 24 hours away from this on the 21st of September. So they both have to be taken together because they kind of merge or blend together. So I'll put the link for that video for the solar eclipse beneath this one. But before I get into the detailed astrology, just a couple of housekeeping items. I've mentioned in a recent video that there are a lot of scam channels out there on YouTube. Many people are suffering from this, not just me. So the easy way to check is via the subscriber numbers. And normally I don't mention numbers, but it's just the easiest way to check that you have been kind enough with your support to drive my subscriber numbers up to 415,000 now. The scammer channels will have way lower than that, 1,000, maybe 2,000. That's the quick and easy way to check, apart from the horrendous content, because they're stealing my videos and rehashing them with some, just crazy stuff. But the reason I'm mentioning this again is it's caused a bit of confusion on Facebook. That's the only other social media platform on which I'm active. And about a month ago, I have two Facebook pages. One is just called Pam Gregory. I've had that for about 15 years, and I put all of my astrology posts on there, plus more general spiritual posts and other uplifting posts about flash mobs happening, singing amazing songs in Paris, or elephant rescues that warm my heart, but always they tend to be uplifting and positive. So I use that, yes, for astrology, but also more general positive topics. But also I have a second Facebook page called Pam Gregory Astrology. And I don't know how many followers, I don't really keep track of the followers I had. It was in the tens of thousands. Anyway, about a month ago, both pages were deleted, just bang, gone. No idea why. And so I managed to restore my Pam Gregory page, so that's back up and running with all the previous content and followers, but the Pam Gregory Astrology page was completely deleted, gone, wiped. And so I lost all the content on that and the followers. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because a lot of people are saying to me, as I had to start it from scratch again, so I think it's now up to about 1,000 followers. So I've got a lot of people writing to me saying, is this a scam page? And it isn't. I'll put links for both these Facebook pages below. It isn't. It's because I've had to start it from scratch again. So, but I'll put the links below so you can get to them directly, and then hopefully that will be clear. The other piece of information before we get into the astrology per se is that I've been asked to publicise a kind of mini summit that's been put on by the Sophia Institute, and this is on the 4th of October. I'll put the registration details below, and I am involved in a 1-hour conversation in that mini summit with the brilliant cosmologist Dr. Jude Caravan. I've had several conversations with Dr. Jude, dear Jude, before, and also one of my astrological heroes, Richard Tarnas, is going to be part of that summit as well. So, as I say, I'll put that link below. So let's get on to talking about the detail of the astrology. It's interesting that we haven't got to the solar eclipse yet, which is happening on the 21st. I'm filming this on the 12th. But I happened to mention in that video, two of the big things we'd be expecting were leaders falling from power. And even on the 12th of September, as I'm recording this, within September, the Japanese Prime Minister has resigned, the Nepalese government has collapsed, the French government has collapsed, and President Macron has just, I think, brought in a fifth prime minister within the last 2 years. It's really teetering. Unfortunately, the president there appears to be very unpopular. There are a lot of riots and demonstrations on the streets of some of the big towns in in France, rather, Paris, Lyon, Toulouse. I know I've seen a lot of demonstrations, and it really, people are talking about, is this another French Revolution? And remember, I've talked a great deal about the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was between 1777 to 1798, when we had the American and the French Revolution. That was the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. It only moved back into Aquarius fully in November 2024 for another 20 years. So this is the beginning of the shift of power to the people. And so we are seeing that, France was born out of revolution, really. The French do that in a big way. So there's a lot going on in France right now. There seem to be a lot of demands for President Macron to stand down. So we'll wait and see what happened. So the Japanese Prime Minister, the Nepal government has also collapsed, as I say. The French government collapsed. Also in the UK, the UK government is under immense pressure right now. The deputy prime minister was forced to resign just yesterday. The UK ambassador to the US was fired. Peter Mandelson was fired, and they are not doing well in the polls. And so we're seeing a lot of revolutionary activity in the UK as well. Because of the difficulties, partly the difficulties with the French leadership, the EU leadership is under a lot of challenge right now. And as you will know from previous videos, I've talked a lot about that in the past with the transits that are happening right now. And so this is just the 12th of September, so I think there's more to come on this area of leadership and government. And the other area I mentioned that we were likely to see around about this month, certainly the beginning of it, is that there could be some news announcements around how health has perhaps been handled in the past, and they are certainly coming out thick and fast, and that's just the beginning. So the bigger issue here, I think, is trust in external authorities. It's part of the process of stepping into our sovereignty, our inner authority, but there are question marks around, have we given away our power to external authorities that we trusted with having the highest good for humanity at their heart? And I think right across the world, with Pluto in Aquarius and other astrological aspects I've mentioned in the past, we are starting to see this in a big way now. Solstices and equinoxes, I'm talking about the Libra equinox here, they are not just one-off moments of one day. It's like striking a tuning fork for the next 3 months. It's like the first layer of paint on the canvas, if you like, for the following 3 months. It's like the backdrop, and then all of the other lunations and astrological aspects, configurations are layered on top of that. But this is a very important one. I know I've been saying all year long things were important, but they are. Just even last December, I was talking about what a year of turbulence 2025 was likely to be, because there were so many endings and beginnings. And I think we can see that really, really clearly. It's a very big year of churn. And we haven't finished the year yet. But these next 3 years are, next 3 years as well, actually. But next 3 months are going to be very strong in this kind of crescendo of endings and beginnings. And that's partly because Pluto in Aquarius, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, on the 29th of August, went out of bounds to the south, where it will remain till the 23rd of November. So, really covering a lot of this 3-month period that I'm going to be talking about. And again, I'll put the conversation I had with US astrologer Rosie Finn about this. She looked back almost 4,000 years in her work, and she found that when Pluto went out of bounds beyond its normal 23.5 degrees orbit within the ecliptic band, that power began to shift to the people. And we were in a much more revolutionary phase of history. There was challenge to the leadership, whether that was the church or the monarchy, or in this case, the governments. And that was also true during the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So what appears to be very, strong top-down government right now, that only sustains, according to Rosie Finn's research, and again, that's reinforced by Pluto being in Aquarius in general, when Pluto goes out of bounds to the north, strong top-down government is reinforced. However, it's just beginning to go to the south. And for the last few months of each year for the next 10 years, it will be out of bounds to the south, and then it doesn't happen again for thousands of years. So, another very important marker in these huge times of change. So what that is saying is we are likely to see more revolutionary behavior. This could be kinetic on the streets, as it is in Paris and Lyon, Toulouse, and many other countries in the world, as we know. But it can also be a revolution in consciousness. That shift of perception and energy and focus, I think this time around, is part of that Pluto in Aquarius out of bounds to the south. It doesn't have to be people on the street protesting. It's a revolution in consciousness. It is also interesting that over this 3-month period, coincidence again, we have the interstellar object of 3I Atlas. Now, a very good person to follow on this is Stefan Burns. I'll put the link below for the video that I think just came out today, because he is very data-based and research-based. He's very factual in how he shares his videos, his material. And he was really saying today that this does not appear to be a comet. Originally, several people thought it was a comet because that seemed to be the most likely thing. That the previous 2 interstellar comets, this is the third one, 3 is the third, I is interstellar, Atlas I think is the observatory that first observed it. The previous 2 that have been observed were comets. This has such anomalous behavior and characteristics that people are starting to say, it's, including Stefan, it is not a comet. We don't quite know what it is, but it's not a comet. And it is traveling at huge speed, 60 kilometers a second. By the time it reaches perihelion at the end of October, it will be traveling at 68 kilometers a second. It is very tightly aligned with the ecliptic plane of our solar system in its trajectory. It's only within 5 degrees of variance of that, which, considering it's come from way, way out in space, we don't know where it has come from or why it was launched, or, this kind of slingshot from the far beyond. But it is quite remarkable that it is in its trajectory aligning with our ecliptic plane. So we are discovering more about it by the day. It is going to be closest to Mars, I think, about the 3rd of October. It's going to be at perihelion, the closest to the Sun, in late October. It's going to be very close to our whole solar system, October and November. but it's going to be at its closest point to the Earth on the 19th of December, according to various astrophysics institutes, and you can check that out for yourself. Now, that's kind of quite remarkable in itself, because that is just right on the Capricorn solstice. So, and in addition to that, people I hugely respect, like Kelly Kolodny in her channeling of Archangel Raphael, have very clearly said that we are in a period of gestation, which began at the Aries equinox, spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, and that we are therefore now entering, at this Libra equinox, the final trimester of that gestation period to give birth to the new galactic baby, or the new consciousness at the Capricorn solstice. And Dr. David Clements is saying something very similar. I had a conversation with Arcturian ambassador Viviane Chauvet this week, and she was saying we're absolutely at the precipice of this new consciousness, and Nancy Rebecca is saying very similar things with her galactic waves of consciousness. So we have, before I even start talking about this Libra equinox, it is not a kind of same old Libra equinox by any match. And I haven't even included all the larger cycles that I've been talking about in recent videos. I'll put the big picture video below, because that looks at all these bigger cycles of the end of the Kali Yuga, etc. And we're moving through the galactic current sheet that only happens every 12,000 years or so. All of these other cycles I've talked about, but just the fact that Pluto is out of bounds to the south through this period of Libra equinox to the Capricorn solstice, and that's when the 3i Atlas is going to be at its closest, and nobody knows quite what it is. But I do want to say at this point, I profoundly believe that it is of high intelligence, that it will bring in new information from wherever it's come from, and that it is of great benefit to humanity. Now, I can't put that on an Excel spreadsheet and show you, but that is my very strong sense, my profound belief within the context of everything else that's happening. It may well magnify this dimensional shift that we are going through, that many other people and I've been talking about as well, and I'll talk more about that later on. So, all of these things are kind of converging, and this birth of a new consciousness that several people are, and other people I haven't named here are talking about. Richard Rudd is talking in these terms. Lee Harris, with his channeling of the Z's, is talking about at this time birth of a new consciousness and a new human, a future human, a change in biology. So I want to say all of that before we even talk about the detailed astrology. So, yes, so do look at the solar eclipse video, because, as I say, these blend together. And because, of course, the Libra equinox is always happening at 0 of Libra, it's the 0 of the cardinals that define the solstices and equinoxes. It is actually activating 7 orbiting bodies that are orbiting between 0 and 2 degrees of their signs. And I've got a separate video on 0 to 2 degrees of all signs, because there's so many activations, there's so many planets orbiting at that point right now. And boy, that's an announcement of big beginnings, isn't it? The very beginnings of their signs. And if you have any planets or angles between 0 and 2 degrees of any sign, you're going to be feeling this, because we've got Pluto at that point, Saturn at that point, or soon will be, Neptune at that point, Uranus at that point, Sedna at that point, etc. So, and more, as you'll see when I share the chart here. It is also the last Libra equinox where we will have Saturn in Pisces, because Saturn has retrograded back into Pisces. It's currently at about 28 degrees of Pisces, but it will move direct again and move forwards into Aries, move out of Pisces very early in the new year, and it will join Neptune at 0 degrees 44 of Aries on the 20th of February. So this is the last Libra equinox. It will also be there still in Pisces at the Capricorn solstice. But this is very interesting as a kind of cleaning up unfinished business. Cleaning up unfinished business. So see where 28 of Pisces is falling in your own chart. You may find that in that area of life you either have more responsibility or more hard work, or more, if it's falling in your fourth house, you're actually doing physical repairs or renovations on your home. It could work in that way. In terms of the global picture, I think this is very much giving us a reality check on things connected to Pisces. So that is the media, film, things like Hollywood. It's anything to do with the illusion. It's a reality check on any deception or lies. It brings up reality check around drugs of all kinds, because Pisces is linked to altered states, as is Neptune, and drugs of all kinds. So, and also it brings up issues around water. Obviously, Pisces being a big water sign, it could suggest in some areas shortages of water. I've mentioned this before. But also, because of Neptune being on the world axis, it can also highlight too much water, flooding, because any planet on the world axis, 0 of Aries, makes that symbolism bigger. So in some areas, and this has been happening already, we could see drought. In other areas, we could see a lot of flooding. It's going to work both ways. And there could be other issues around water. I mean, some amazing issues, I think, coming up around water. But it could be, toxicity or pollution or that kind of thing. We have not treated water well. We've not treated the earth well. We've not treated nature well. And I think this is a really big wake-up call to all of that too. Neptune, before I show you this chart, Neptune also being at that 0 of Aries, it retrogrades back into Pisces on the 22nd of October. But as I say, early next year, both Saturn and Neptune move forwards into Aries. Aries is primal fire. So even though Neptune is all about the seas and the oceans and water, and that's being highlighted, issues around water, droughts, flooding, etc., because it's at 0 degrees of primal fire, it is also going to emphasize fire, sadly. So I do that, and we've seen this already, desperately sadly. There have been a lot of wildfires. It's been really tragic in areas of Canada and America and Australia. It's been really, really sad. So, and also in Europe. So, just work with our daily evening meditations, 7 p.m. UK time every day, and you just join us for 15 minutes free energetically, no tech, no Zoom, and just stay in calm and peace. See everything calming, soothing, being peaceful, because we really do make a difference. We're coming together in big numbers every day to make a difference, to calm down war, to calm down real horrors in the world, and also to calm down extreme weather and world event, big earth changes. We are going to see more big earth changes, I feel, more seismic activity, because one of the things that's happening with Three-Eye Atlas being so close to us, and the fact that we're in the peak of solar cycle 25 as well, on top of everything else, we are very likely to see a lot more solar activity through the last few months of this year. And that is part of the reason, apart from all the astrology, that's part of the reason we are very likely to see more seismic activity. Now, you'll be very aware we've seen a lot of that recently, a lot of volcanic activity as well, not just earthquakes, but volcanoes as well. And that is likely to continue and indeed increase as Earth goes through her own rebirth. Earth is doing her thing and, kind of shedding a lot of the density and the trauma that she has been through. So expect that to happen, so far broadly. It is, the earthquakes have been offshore. We've been incredibly lucky with large magnitude earthquakes that most of them have not brought about casualties, but that isn't always going to be the case, sadly, but we can just do our best with our meditations. So let's take a look at the chart. I think I've talked enough at this point. So let's take a look at the chart for the Libra equinox. So this is happening 22nd of September, as I say. Now, a very busy chart and an awful lot to say about this too. So this always happens when the sun moves into 0 of Libra, which it does universal time 1820. That's on the clock, it's 1920 UK time, British summertime. So instantly we can see that the sun is opposing Neptune and Saturn here. So I've talked a great deal about Neptune and Saturn. I'll put a link for that video below as well, so I don't have to go over that ground. But essentially, this Libra equinox is acting as an activator for that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And this I see particularly once Saturn comes back to 0 of Aries. This is 0 of Aries is that degree of pure potentiality. It's the very first degree of the zodiac, pure potential. So Libra, the Libra sun, 0 of Libra, is saying, okay, what are you going to do with that pure potential? What are you going to do with it? And there's a lot of creativity in here because Pisces and Libra, I would actually say, are the two most creative signs. So there's a lot to play with here. And we also have 10 orbiting bodies in cardinal signs as well, I believe. I think 11, actually. So if we go around, cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So if we go around, we've got Sun, Mercury, Moon, Maki-Maki, Ixion, Kwawa. We've got Neptune, Salacia, Lilia, Hakuna, Honua, and also Jupiter. I think that's 11 in total. And Chiron. So cardinality is about action, and this is going to be a very action-packed 3 months. I mean, and remember, I'm talking about 3 months here. I'm not just talking about the 22nd of September. The other lunations, as I say, will be added as layers on top of that. So what are we activating? What are we planning? What are we dreaming in, Neptune? What are we yearning for? Neptune. And there are lots of people yearning for a very different life. What are we dreaming in? Are we going to be able to, or are we going to take a risk? Aries, step out sometime next year. I'd suggest a plan and dream, but just my sense is there's going to be an awful lot of change in these next 3 months. So in terms of a launch of a new life, a new plan, a new idea, a new project, a new passion, if it's a big move that you're planning, and I know many people are thinking of changing geography, then it might be better to wait until some of this turbulence is over and settles a little, because this is a 9 year. In numerology, it's a 9 year, and because 2 plus 2 plus 5 adds up to 9. In numerology, that's very much a year of ending. And boy, we're right in the midst of that at the moment. Next year, 2026, is a 1 year, and that's a whole new beginning. That isn't just in the numerology, it's the fact that all of the outer planets by the end of April will have moved into their new signs fully for the rest of their cycles. It's new energy, it's fresh energy, it's direct, it's not going back and forwards as we have with the planets this year. Endings, beginnings. It's a much greater surge and momentum forward. So that would be a better year if you're planning something major. I'd humbly suggest, if it's something really big, any creative project, of course, you can start at any time. But just be aware there's going to be a lot happening in change in the next few months. Choices are more important than they have ever been. And I've said this before. Choice here, Gemini, because of the gravitas, the importance of the times we are in, we've gone way beyond the hamster wheel. And so be really wise and conscious in your choices. The other part of choice is focus. Where are you putting your focus? Remember, as Paul Levy said, your focus is your superpower. Your focus is what you are bringing into manifestation. Because in the quantum world, your focus energizes the quantum soup to start to bring manifestation into reality. Starts to bring manifestation into reality. So choice and focus, could they be writ large in your brain? This is going to teach us to be masters of our energy, our frequency, our minds, our set point of frequency going forwards. So more than ever in your life, if you can really, and whatever you're focusing on, you can get into a really powerful momentum with that. If you're in fear, yes, you can get on a roll with, gosh, there's more fear and more scary things. And that is most certainly a timeline, because people have been writing to me saying, isn't that a very obvious timeline? Absolutely, 100%. Do I think there's going to be more war on that timeline? Absolutely, 100%. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But it doesn't have to be your timeline. There are lots of other timelines. And as I say, broadly, there are two broad collective timelines. One based on fear and one based on love. So if you're being caught up in the narrative about the awfulness of everything, and it is awful, you will magnetize to you more things to become fearful of. And I'm really giving a bit of tough love here. And I know it's hard. I know people are going through awful tragedies right now. I've got people all around me, close to me, and it's really heartrending. I'm not pretending that everything is rosy. But the more we energize that, the more it will step into our reality, because we'll be having conversations with people that feel the same. Yeah, ain't it awful? Isn't it scary? Yes, there's going to be more, war and death, and gosh, what's going to happen? They will be your conversations, your social network, what you look at on social media, etc. If you are focused on love, which is much more invisible, and joy and peace and compassion and community and coming together, it is more invisible by a mile, because the other timeline is so dramatic and in our faces. But if we're going to create something different and way better than we've ever known, we have to have the discipline to focus on love and joy and compassion and peace and gratitude. So we have to find ways to do that. And I'm going to come back to that at the end of the video in some very simple ways to help you. But we have to be aware that we all have a choice. We all have a choice. Nobody's forcing us onto either timeline. We have a choice. So I'm going to be even more vigorous in saying that than I have been before. So we have I hardly know where to start with this because there's so much here. So yes, we have this yearning for our dream, and are we actually really going to make real the dream for ourselves? Are we going to take that risk, particularly into the early months of next year? We have a T-square here between the Sun, Ixion, and Neptune, Saturn. Now, Ixion, you might remember, was the lawless brother of Pluto, and he murdered his father-in-law and tried to rape Zeus's wife when he was given a second chance. He was eventually spun off on a burning wheel into eternity. But the other positive expression of Ixion is he just decides to abandon mainstream society and almost with a knapsack on his back go off to find joy in simplicity through his own pathway in life, joy in simplicity. And I know that speaks to many of us right now. So that is one T-square. So I think this and also, by the way, this is echoed, I think, by Nessus conjunct the North Node that I've talked about in the last couple of videos. I've talked about Nessus as a centaur and the symbolism there around, blood and deception and gaslighting and all kinds of things. Go back to previous videos because I don't want to go through all that again. But Nessus being conjunct the North Node is recognizing all of this kind of moral bankruptcy, let's call it, is a necessary part of where we are headed to as a collective in order to make that step into awakening. Hope that's making sense. So recognizing the moral bankruptcy that Ixion, in its negative expression, symbolizes, and Nessus, is a necessary part of our awakening, which is Uranus in this unique configuration, again, the big picture, trine to Pluto, and in sextiles to Neptune and Saturn. And I believe this is a completely unique astrological configuration, as, again, talked about a great deal. So that is the T-square there. Another thing I want to, by the way, also, not only Nessus conjunct the North Node, but we have Orcus, dwarf planet, conjunct the South Node. And Orcus in myth was one of the lords of the underworld, Etruscan god of the underworld. And he's quite shamanic, actually, Orcus, and very much symbolizes the transmuting of dark into light, making people who have violated divine law or sacred law see the light. So transmuting the dark to the light. And Alan Clay talks beautifully about this. Nessus is about the buck stops here. So we have some very clear themes happening, feeding into that. We have 4 orbiting bodies here in Libra. Libra is one of the signs connected to the law. The other is Sagittarius. So very much legal issues could come up around this time. But it's also just about the need to find balance, to find harmony with nature. My goodness, how we've abandoned that and how we yearn, so many of us yearn to get back to that equilibrium that we saw in Lemuria. Ancient Lemuria was a beautiful example of that. And Makemake, the dwarf planet, is linked to it's the creator god of the Rapa Nui people, linked to Easter Island. And you can read the history of Easter Island, that it was very much ravaged and pillaged by European sailors who brought in disease and rats and cut down all the trees, etc. And eventually Easter Island was down to a tiny, tiny number, I think it was just a couple of hundred residents. It was tiny. But because of their understanding of natural cycles, and partly because the soil there contains a very unusual chemical called rapamycin, which helps regeneration, they managed to regenerate the soil, the food system, the ecosystem back to health. And so Maki Maki is a very powerful symbol for regeneration and for new earth, as is Homaya, that I've talked a lot about. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, because people keep writing to me, Homaya. And Mars is energizing that. So remember, all these things I'm talking about are looking down the pipeline 3 months. So Libra is about really getting this sense of balance and harmony and coming back to a real love of the earth where everything operates in oneness and harmony. And I just feel this so deeply, and more people are being drawn to this kind of venture, whether it's regenerative farming or permaculture or whatever it is. Also, we have very positively a beautiful grand trine in air. That is Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, conjunct Uranus Sedna, and in a trine to the Sun here. Mercury is a little bit wide. But now, a grand trine in air, and air is about ideas, it's about our social systems as well. And so this is brilliant for the birth of new ideas, about all kinds of things, how society will operate, how our, how we will come together in community, Aquarius, how also in a greater understanding of our consciousness and our neural networks. That's very much, I think, not only Pluto in Aquarius, but also Uranus in Gemini as well. We're going to make huge discoveries about our consciousness and how our neural networks work. I also think we're going to make huge discoveries not only about the out there. Every time Pluto moves into Aquarius historically, which isn't very often because it has a 248-year orbit, we go deeper into the cosmos and discover more about it. And hey presto, 3i Atlas turns up. So right on time. So, I think that we are going to discover a lot about the deeper cosmos via that object, whatever it is. I also think it potentially could give us a great deal more galactic connection. That is the literal translation of Uranus in Gemini, galactic connection, galactic communication. I think we're entering a whole new phase of, as Archangel Raphael says via Kelly Kolodny, the birth of a new galactic consciousness. I feel that very strongly. So that is beautiful for birthing all kinds of new ideas. I think we're going to have a lot more discoveries of the deep seas and oceans we know so little about that can provide potentially new plant food, new medicines for us, all kinds of things, and also new forms of life at a deeper level. Is this going to teach us a lot more about the inner earth beings that we're starting to find out about as well, who are very advanced in their intelligence? It isn't just the, as I've said so often, it isn't just the out there, it's the in, deep down in oceans and within the earth. I think it's going to be a revolutionary period of discovery and new ideas and new inventions in so many ways. And also remember, the ruler of this Libra equinox is Venus, planet of love in an earth sign of Virgo. So this is greater love being birthed for our earth right now. And also Virgo, I always think of as connecting us back to ancient wisdom, shamanism, plant medicine, essential oils, all that kind of thing, ancient forms of healing. And there's also a sense of purification. with Virgo, a sense of purification, which I think is very beautiful. Now, I've talked at great length in other videos about this finger of fate, finger of God between Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Homer, and Uranus Sedna. I've talked a great deal about it, so I won't cover that ground again, but it is a long-term, lasting the next 2 to 3 years. It's being energized right now by Uranus. This may not only bring more to the fore about New Earth, because Homaya is a very strong symbol for New Earth as well. She's also a very powerful, she's linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility. I think a lot could come up at this time around fertility because Mars is energizing that. And as I've mentioned before, Scorpio is linked to medicine. And also Jupiter in Cancer. This is a sign of motherhood. So I think a lot could be coming up around that as well. However, I've covered this in the solar eclipse video. Don't forget that also Mars is also square to Pluto. So this can be a clash between individual power, Mars, and kind of state power. And again, that's back to the whole revolutionary theme. But it also brings in terrific willpower and focus. If you have if you have a hard aspect, but even with a trine or a sextile in your own birth chart between Mars and Pluto, it can give you laser focus, tremendous willpower. And so that's, again, that will really help our sense of focus and how to make our choices more widely. Now, so much to share here. The moon is conjunct Makemake. So this is the people in global astrology. So the people are really very much wanting this sense of the earth to be reborn and regenerated. So this is also a T-square, another T-square, 10 degrees of the cardinals here, square to Quawa, another dwarf planet. And with Quawa, the important thing, I think Quawa is very linked to the principle of frequency, because the myth of Quawa, and Quawa is linked to the Tongva people who lived originally around the Los Angeles basin. This is about bringing ourselves out of chaos into joy. The recognition that we cannot create from chaos because we'll only get more chaos. The need to shift our frequency by coming together in community. Quawa is very related to community. And in song and dance, raise our frequency into joy and create from joy. So Quawa is one of the teachers of frequency here and community. I think this is so interesting. And Quawa is square to, and the moon and Makemake are opposing, Salasia and Lekilekia Honua. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's too many letters in it. But let us just recap on this. Salasia is mermaid energy, wife of Neptune in myth, very linked to the shimmering sunlight, moonlight on the sea. I think she's linked to photonic light, as well as obviously water. Lelia Ka Honua, gosh, I must practice that. It's such a hard word to say. I covered in a recent conversation with Alan Clay. He sees that sednoid, as it's being called, as representing our soul field consciousness and multi-dimensional consciousness as well. Multi-dimensional consciousness. Philip Sedgwick, who was a brilliant also researcher, astrologer, pioneer, is seeing Lelia Aqua Honua as cracks between the worlds, taking the long and high view, because this sednoid is linked to the Kalea bird, not to the bird itself, but to the migration of that bird. And Philip Sedgwick is seeing that as taking the high and long view of things and being very possibility oriented as well. Infinite possibilities coming up. Now, I think it's very interesting that this is coming into our consciousness, this sednoid, and it's from, a long way up. It tells a 33,000-year orbit. Sedna has an 11,000-year orbit, but they are both, and thanks to Martha Alter Hines for pointing this out, they are both linked to the Arctic. Sedna is the Inuit goddess of the Arctic seas, and Lelia Kahanua is the plover bird, the kolea bird, that is birthed in the Arctic, but then migrates to Hawaii. Massive flight. These tiny birds fly for days to then land in Hawaii and then go back to the Arctic. So, this is a sense of us leaving one world and transitioning to another. I think that's part of the myth here. Leaving one world, which is the frozen Arctic, and landing in the abundant nature and sunshine and warmth of Hawaii. It's a total, utter transition physically. But I think this is also suggesting, because it's coming into our consciousness now, a total, complete transition of consciousness as well. The fact that this sednoid is coming from so far out, beyond our Oort cloud, and inevitably bringing in new information for us, isn't it interesting it's doing that at the same time as Three-Eye Atlas is coming into our consciousness as well? Now, both Sedna and Lilia Kahonua are approaching their perihelion. Not for a little while. Sedna comes closest to perihelion, to the sun, in 2076, and Lelia Kahonua does it in 2078. Now, you may think, well, that's 50 years away, it's a crazy amount of time. Well, if you've got an 11,400-year orbit and a 33,000-year orbit, and they are approaching, and it's always stronger in astrology when planets are approaching, applying, I think we are going to just go through some immense shifts in consciousness as they come. We don't have to wait till 2076 or 2078 to feel the full force of them. I think it's happening right now, because if Philip Sedgwick is linking it to, it's Alan Clay linking it to multidimensional consciousness, isn't it interesting that recently Greg Braden and Cryon, channeled by Lee Carroll, and also I picked up recently that Dr. John Ryan, who is a medical professional, is now also talking about how he's seeing the 24th chromosome coming back online. This is our chromosome that is linked to our multidimensional ability. So, this is just such a powerful time. It's so interesting. I think we are going to discover a huge amount more about light and water, of course, thanks to Veda. Veda talks about water as condensed light, carrying all that information from billions of years ago. Water still carries that. Water carries the memory. We are gravitationally organized bodies of light. That's what we are. We are liquid crystals. By molecular count, as Veda says, we are 99% water. We know from all kinds of people's work, but also from Vedas, that frequency, kwawa, affects the coherence and structure of water. We are just going to learn so much about light and water going forwards. And so the more we can be in coherence in our energy field through staying in peace, staying in joy, staying in gratitude, staying in compassion, those are coherent emotions. We are affecting every cell in our body to become more coherent. That not only affects the cells of our body, it expands our heart's toroidal field, as I've talked about a lot, infects other people we're in contact with that coherence. And it is really the most powerful state we can be in terms of heart coherence. But also remember the importance of blessing our water. And I talked about that last time, that Archangel Raphael had said that if 35% of us bless our water, that would get us to unity consciousness. And I do it with every glass of water I drink. Just thank you, bless you, water, for your life-giving properties, your health-giving properties, and whatever else you want to add into that. But not only are these new light codes coming from our galactic core being absorbed into us and embodied in us, if we're a relatively high consciousness and can hold that light, the new light codes are coming into us via the water we're drinking. So blessing it is a really good idea. So we're breathing it in, we're absorbing those new light codes from sunshine. Even if it's a cloudy day, we're still absorbing them. Even if we're indoors, we're still absorbing them, but we're also drinking them. So, be aware of this environment that we are swimming around in, literally. Okay. So much here about, I also think, stepping into our sovereignty. Please don't forget that. That's what so much of this is about. And I think all this Libra energy will shift from being people-pleasing, as it's often expressed in the past, to I'm standing in my sovereignty, in my inner authority, and how can I offer my unique gifts to the world, back to the world in community and collaboration, Libra. Libra is very much to do with collaboration. So this is just an immense period of time. And I know this video is running quite long, and I apologize for that, but I really wanted to emphasize just the gravity of this situation, and the gravity in a good way, the importance of it. But so, and also I'll stop sharing here, but people may be saying to me, well, the world is in total chaos. The world is very turbulent. It's just look at the wars and governments collapsing, and the whole thing is just churning. And yes, it is. And that's exactly what the astrology saw. I've been talking about this for the last 18 months for sure, maybe 2 years. It's right on time. It's right on time for the old structures and the old systems to collapse. And that's not comfortable. When you demolish your old house, it's a mess. When you knock out your kitchen cupboards, it's a mess. It's not tidy. It's not smooth. It's noisy. But it's a process we have to go through in order to birth this new consciousness. So what can we? So these 3 months that the Libra equinox is initiating are an incredibly powerful preparation phase for whatever is going to emerge at the Capricorn solstice. Winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. Because that's when 3i Atlas, at its current speed and on its current trajectory, will be at its closest point to the Earth on the 19th of December, according to the space agencies. So, and I think that, with all the other things I've talked about, really has the potential of a very big consciousness shift. I truly do, in my bones. And so this is possibly, the most difficult phase. What can we do? Stay in love. Try and find like-minded people. Ideally connect to them in person, but if you can't, online is good too. Collect your soul tribe, as it were. Collect your soul tribe together. Because remember that your reality, if you're living in love, your reality, that the people you're connecting with, that you're having conversations with, that you are going to meetings with, the social media you're digesting, the people you're listening to, will reflect that state of frequency of love and joy and possibility and multidimensionality. Whereas if you're on the fear timeline, it's an absolutely different reality, a totally different world. I hope I'm being clear here, because it's so important. You construct your reality, everyone and everything you're interacting with, from that frequency. That's why it's so important. So be calm, be the anchor, be the light. Stay in your light, as Vivienne Chauvet said. Stand in your light. And, I really am feeling that very strongly, and I said this after I'd come back from a shamanic retreat in June in France, that, New Earth is not a place we go to. It's something that is entirely within us. It's entirely within us as a frequency, as a feeling, that we are embodying it. We're embodying love. We're embodying all those things. And to help you, and I'm doing this, I have my daily struggles as well, believe me, but I'm really walking my talk as best I can. And what I'd suggest to you, because I think New Earth is just an expansion of our perception, shedding of the veil, an expansion of our perception, an expansion of our lens on the world. It's almost like particularly this works if you're in nature, you just kind of soften that lens. You expand it, you soften it, you sit with your back to a tree, or you just sit on the grass and listen to the birds for a while, and almost try and have beginner's mind, the Zen beginner's mind, like it's the very first time you've seen that oak tree or heard that bird song, and feel real childlike wonder and awe at that, and milk it. Stare into a flower, stare into a rose, stare into a dahlia, anything, like it's the very first time you've seen it, and just say, gosh, look at the beauty of this. Every morning I go out and I thank the sun for being there. Bless you, sun, for being here. I'm blessing every glass of water. And as I'm moving through on my morning walks, I'm blessing the trees. I'm looking up into the canopy of the trees in a bigger way and say, God, you're so beautiful. I'm just loving your magnificence, and thank you for everything you're providing us with. And start to remember that nature is this vast, interconnected, divine intelligence that's always been there, from which we have been so disconnected in our modern lives. Reconnect to that sense of oneness, reconnect to that sense of being held by nature, as it were. And I know that many of you will think staring into a flower will fix the world, and that's crazy, but it's getting into the right frequency and energy to create this tsunami of love, which, believe me, is getting stronger by the day. Believe me, is getting stronger by the day. And it's being reflected in the people who do the daily meditations and report back the experiences they're having. And many people are organizing meditations all over the world. We're all kind of joining together in that in that effort. And so, yes, really think that love and joy is an act of revolution and rebellion too. And as far as you're able, even if it's part of your day, staying in that heightened state, that new earth state, that heightened perception state, even if it's in and out a little bit, that you're toggling between, because I think so many of us are toggling between 3D and higher dimensions right now, but you're practicing more multidimensional, you're practicing expanding your perception and your lens. An awful lot in this video, and I didn't plan it to be quite so long, but I really hope it's helped you, because I really wanted to emphasize these next few months, because it's into very fast moving, it's not going to slow down anytime soon. So the more we can find the anchor of calm in ourselves, the better it's going to be, because it could be, otherwise it's easy to spin off. But next year's the energy of the 1 year, the new beginning, the fresh, the propulsion forwards. So this is the preparation time, the yearning, the dreaming, the planning. I think I've said enough. God bless. Hope it's helped you, and I'll be back very soon indeed with something different. Bye for now.